Ladies and gents, welcome to Reacts. This is every single Warhammer 40k faction re-explained. Part 1, Part 2. Yeah, this is by Bricky. It's been awesome so far. We talked up, there was an intro, decently sized intro. I love that. It's like a cinematic somehow. And then we talked about Necrons. I love Necrons. I don't know what that means. I guess all factions are some way overpowered, but Necrons are the most overpowered faction. Let's be honest. Like, you can talk about anything, but somebody told me in the comments that Necron destroyed their super weapons. And one of the super weapons was something that you can, like destroy a star or something, and they didn't consider that big enough to destroy it, implying that they destroyed some ridiculously overpowered weapons. It makes sense. War of the Heavens was galactic-wide war, where stars were nothing, like solar systems are nothing, can be destroyed left and right. Think of Star Wars, but if they somehow got the Death Star right and used that left and right. And more than that, War of the Heavens, as the name implied, was too overpowering, right? So obviously they destroyed a lot of weapons they use in that one. Even something that's left around right now is threatening to everyone. Implying if Necron was at full power, still now, there is no war. Like, everybody's screwed. Maybe Chaos Gods themselves have to enter the war properly. But I don't know how they would do that with their proper demons and everything. But yeah, Necrons are so powerful in that way. I guess we are talking about Chaos now. It's going to be awesome. Nurgle and all that. I'm waiting for Nurgle. I don't know why, just like with 2020, COVID and everything. Yeah, Nurgle feels like something that's very close to home in a way, right? All the, pandemic and all the diseases and things. Khorne being Khorne, just kill, all that shit. Others being like Slaanesh just doing his her, whatever. Slaanesh doing his own thing, right? Tzeentch just doing shit in the background. What you doing there, Tzeentch? Never mind. Okay. Let's do this one. Remember, if you like my reactions that I do, don't forget to like and subscribe. That way I know which type of videos to react to more. I love Warhammer, as most of you already know. I love doing Warhammer reactions, so the more engagement this video gets, the more Warhammer I'm going to continue. So yeah, let's do this one.
The forces of chaos are beings that serve directly under their patron deity. There are 4 current gods of chaos at the moment: Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh. Each of them represent various facets of and emotions of sentient species and play a great game against one another for total control over their realms. Interestingly enough, while their disciples have physical forms we can understand, the chaos gods do not have a physical visual that you can perceive in reality. So while there are tons of fantastic fan art, we do not know what they truly look like, though they are conveniently color-coded. Khorne is the god of blood and murder, carnage and slaughter. He is the one who is most powered by the wholesale killing of any living thing, for Khorne cares not from where the blood flows. With a sacred number of 8, he is the lord of all things involving killing and blood and gore. The champions are extremely strong as well, with monumental muscles and extremely large weapons. A true analog to Khorne would be his greater demon, the Bloodthirster, an enormous muscle-bound flying devil with an axe so...
Sometimes I actually wonder what is more common in Warhammer, war and death or disease? Because that would dictate which Chaos God is more powerful, right? And I feel like war and death must be more than any... But then again, I don't know, like there's way too many worlds, right? And like wars happening in some of them. Warhammer is so big and so many planets that even it's like statistic, right? It's like how many people get disease out of 8 billion people on Earth? I don't know, a few million. That's a lot. So it's like that. Like a lot of planets are in the war, but then again, there are way too many planets that are not, and maybe all of them have some kind of disease. So is Nurgle more powerful? Khorne more powerful? I don't know.
Large, it splits tanks in a single swing. They move into battle with armor of brass adorned by the skulls of their foes and pools of freshly spilt blood. This may appear to be quite frightening, of course, demonic, one might say. But in the world of chaos, all emotions feed one of these gods in one way or another. If you were to define Khorne with single words, you would use blood, carnage, murder, skulls. But you'd be missing out on important ones like strength, honor, prowess, courage, and skill. Khorne is not just about the wholesale slaughter of people. He is about the honor and power of martial combat. The true strength there is in besting someone in physical strength and skill. Of course, a murderer would be someone who would feed
I can already hear Emperor Mankind screaming in the background. Honor? What honor was there in Horus Heresy? He corrupted my son.
Khorne, but a soldier could feed Khorne. A martial artist or professional fighter could feed Khorne. A warrior, good or bad, feeds Khorne. A diplomat does not. A premier soldier does. A GoFundMe does not. This is what leads many mortals down the path of Khorne, for he will bless those that bring him enough skulls. And in a world this destructive, there are many ways to reap a high tally for him. Prepare the dread claws and unchain the mad ones. Glorious battle awaits us today, for the world below has refused to surrender. Let us descend upon them with fury and rage, giving no quarter and sparing only those warriors who fight well enough to earn a place amongst us. As to the rest, their lives and possessions are ours, but their skulls are for Khorne. Normally, if I ever want to explain Khorne, I just kind of show him this clip.
I'd never stab you in the back, Shepard. Warriors like you and me, straight to the face.
Moving on, Tzeentch is the second god, the god of trickery.
I love how Bricky is a Mass Effect fan. The original Mass Effect trilogy is untouchable. Sometimes I really wonder, will we ever get a game like that? Will Mass Effect ever? I don't have hope for that, but yeah, fingers crossed.
And mischief, the changer of ways, the great conspirator and the architect of fate. With a sacred number of 9, Tzeentch is truly the god of change in all of its forms, but there is an obvious undercurrent of mischief and cunning. Tzeentch is such a liar that his pants have gone thermonuclear.
Where the f is it?
His favorite pastime is asking questions that have no answers while simultaneously
What was
making
that?
up answers on the spot to a question he didn't ask.
Have you ever had a dream that you want him to do you so much you could do anything?
So you see the lines that were appearing here. Kid was like in a downward spiral, right? It was dawning on him, I'm fucking up, and because of that, he was fucking up even more. It was just getting worse and worse.
Anything?
He is such a
He saved it to
conniving
the
little
end.
bastard that every emotion of lying, of scheming, of trickery is a direct way to help feed him. An unfaithful partner, a politician, a spy. All these people feed Tzeentch in one way or another, and it doesn't matter if the intentions are good. Acceptance does not feed Tzeentch. Change
So Tzeentch is the
does.
most powerful one.
Tzeentch doesn't care about your facts. He only wants opinions. Because he represents change, he also represents hope, though. Schemes are not always bad, and even the hope to make a better tomorrow is the change he seeks. Because he is the architect of fate and the mastery of sorcery, his presence is purely unknowable. Every depiction of a Tzeentchian demon contains more eyes than are necessary and more mouths than I know what to do with. It is a biblically accurate angel if the angel gaslit you into thinking birds are government drones. But are they? The creatures at his disposal.
Yeah, I guess similar god I can think of in Elder Scrolls. Who's that? I forgot that. Who did the Oblivion? Fuck. I haven't played Elder Scrolls in a long time. I'm forgetting gods' names. Right? Not Hermes Mora. That's that conniving guy. I forgot. He, right? Who did the Oblivion thing. So the whole detail of that is like, of course, he's all that, like evil, all that. But in the end of the day, he's the god of change and things. So that's why he's constantly doing this war shit. So change happens all the time. So there's more to it than just like simple evilness, right? I like how Warhammer also has that element. Gods are not just simple or corn, it's just blood and there's honor and everything. Tzeentch isn't some conniving and deceiving. No, there's like change and like bigger things attached to it.
will adorn themselves with the knowledge of sorceries and the unknown, all to provide a mind-crushing experience. Fighting demons from outside of our reality is difficult enough, but fighting demons from unreality, purposely attempting to trick you, is a whole new thing entirely. And that is before we even get started on the gigantic bird of sorcery you're going to need to face. Do not ask which creature screams in the night. Do not question who waits for you in the shadow. It is my cry that wakes you in the night, and my body that crouches in the shadow. I am Tzeentch, and you are the puppet that dances to my tune. Third of the Chaos Gods is the one of acceptance of rot and pestilence, the grandfather himself, Papa Nurgle. Nurgle is the exact opposite of Tzeentch. Where Tzeentch believes in change and hope for a future, Nurgle believes in stagnation and the end of everything. At one point,
I like how his whole element is, do you know this TV show Supernatural? I remember I used to watch that a lot. I watched all the way to, I think I didn't watch last 2-3 seasons because, like, I don't know, it was going all over the place. But I remember that, like, there was a character called Death, right? And it was so cool because it's biblical, obviously. But I don't know how accurate that is biblical wise. But Death was like, okay, I'm older than God and all that. Like, I'm the end, right? I am old as God, I'm older than God, and there was a whole element of that, like everything dies, so I'm death in that way. So Nurgle is something like that. It's not just like pestilence or no, it's decay. Everything decays, right? So that's what Nurgle. That's why people say Nurgle is like considered like one of the like old and like more chaos god that way. I don't know. So it's because of its decay, right? Entropy. In the end of the day, everything decays, right? So Nurgle is something like that.
Point or another, we will all decay, we will all rot, and we will all end. And with a sacred number of 7, every single thing, pestilence, boil, and everything in between, comes under the great shadow and girth of Nurgle himself. For Nurgle, the plight of mortals is his fear and wine. And no matter how solid life might be, everything will decay in the end. In the creation of life, there must be an end to that life. And nobody has more creations to end lives than Grandfather Nurgle himself. Every boil, every blemish, every pus-filled wound and disease, every rot and every plague is kept and concocted by Nurgle. This, humorously, keeps Nurgle as a jovial god. He is full.
So Nurgle is the reason why I'm still getting acne in my 30s. Maybe it's pre-workout, I don't know.
Full of life and laughter, and by creating as many diseases as he possibly can, he shares that joy with mortals. I mean, his envoy is the great unclean one, and look at how happy he is. And there's a lot of him to love. A fear of death in general is feeding Nurgle. All disease makes him stronger, but to pray for salvation for a wounded loved one is to feed Nurgle. The timeless and inevitable fear that one day you will rot and decay is what gives him strength. The Peloton.
And Nurgle is the argument why everything shouldn't be in HD. Maybe SD, simple, whatever, 360p would have been fine because I don't want to see all this fucking detail. The more I look at it, the more I realize, oh my god.
Won't feed Nurgle. Licking the doorknob on a public bathroom certainly does. However, should you embrace your grandfather's gifts, you may find an end to your pain. Maybe. All mortal followers of the Chaos Gods found themselves there in one way or another, either through the direct worship or the slow corrupting of their souls. But those that take Nurgle's gifts and embrace the decay of their bodies may end up being chosen among his few as a faithful servant. In doing so, you will be free of the pain caused by Nurgle's ailments, and you may even find yourself just as jovial and happy as he is. Maybe. His enemies shall wither and die. His allies shall wither and die. The universe and all within it shall wither and die. And when the great corruption has settled over the land and permeated the very foundations of reality itself, then shall the Lord of all rise from the rot and ruin, spread his arms wide to reclaim all of his dutiful children.
this feels like prophecy because this is a God talking, God or the God's people talking about the future. Like, okay, universe and everything will die. There will be a great corruption, and then He will come and like. But then again, can gods predict the future in this one? Chaos gods, like what is every time there's a concept of God, what is that God? Is that God as like all the other gods, or is that God like the one how Christianity sees God? Like God created everything, God is the one who knows everything. That's not the case in chaos gods, because chaos gods were created at one time by our emotions and things. So it's not necessarily like they would know the future or something.
Those were the three major chaos gods for a very long time, emboldened by war and death on a galactic scale, ever present but now fact on the suffering of a galaxy. One race, for a while, was able to elude the pull of chaos, an advanced race of psychically attuned aliens whose master over the physical world was so strong that chaos could not glean from them the morsels of power they once had, or so they couldn't, not for a long while. 60 million years ago, in an attempt to combat the Necrons in Catan, the Old Ones made a new species. One with innate power in the warp and the ability to harness it with a mastery that was unseen by so many others. A mastery so powerful, the Necrons retreated to sleep in order to wait it out. It was no longer a galaxy to be ruled by them, but instead begin the age of the... The Eldar are a race of pointed-eared humanoids that are all psychically attuned to the warp. If we're being meta here, these are space elves, and these elves ruled the galaxy in the time the Necrons went to sleep and humanity began to rise. The Eldar's empire was galaxy-wide and lasted for longer than any other galactic power that we know of. Their understanding of all things...
Somehow, there is always elves. I guess Tolkien's elves, that's where the inspiration comes from, pointed ear and everything. One is a constant there. They are one of the oldest race. They have ruled for a long time. They think they are better. They have some kind of rod up their ass. They're just like, they think they're better than everyone. Maybe they are. And it's always that element, right? Pompousness and all that shit. Somehow all elves or elves-like things have that in common. Same thing with the Eldar, I'm guessing.
Was exceptional. With every single one of them being psychers, they had the ability to master the warp and use it to their advantage. See, being a psyker is basically like being a wizard, or I guess in this case it's more of a sorcerer, since you are born with the gifts as opposed to learning them. In order to utilize your psychic abilities, however, you must then reach into the other dimension, into the warp, into hell for that power. So if you were to say, cast Fireball, your mind would reach into the warp, gather the strength to rewrite reality, to then cast Fireball. Now, you might think to yourself, doesn't that mean if you are opening up a power to the warp, you may create a lot of risk to yourself because of all the horrible things we just talked about in the warp? Yes. However,
that is why psychers in like Imperium are like constantly like affected by warp and warp things. They're always, so how did Eldar like somehow evaded that? Is weird.
Warhammer 40k willpower is a real tangible thing, in the sense that in its own right, it can be weaponized. Being strong of will means being strong of soul, and being strong of soul means you can resist the pull of the warp that much more. A more inexperienced psyker opens up a hole into the warp that is large, and that hole widens to get more power, allowing evil things to get in. A powerful psyker is able to open a very small hole, but with immense force to get the same amount of power with less risk. The Eldar are master psychers. Every single one of them can call upon the warp, and over millions of years they have perfected it so much so that they can weave structures out of it. In some species in the galaxy, they utilize the warp itself for interstellar travel. The Eldar ain't having any of that noise. How about we utilize a fancy alternative mode of travel that is substantially safer than the old ones created, called the webway? What about dying? Miss me with that. We no longer age. And if we do, we can just be reborn like that. Food, water, materials, we make things out of distilled warp essence itself. We sing unreality into cathedrals to dine in. What truly could the Eldari Empire possibly fear?
Themselves.
The Eldari Empire's biggest fear was themselves, with a society so perfect they wanted for naught, and this led them down dark and dangerous paths. When the base functions of society are no longer a problem for you, you tend to experiment. Perhaps the medium rare steak on your plate would be better if it was elf meat. Hey, I'm not saying we should make cannibalism legal, but like, what's the issue with a little taste?
Yeah, the whole concept of debauchery, right? You know, there is saying like empty mind is home for like demons. I don't know how to translate that, right? There's a saying here. I'm pretty sure there's gonna saying that like empty mind is like a home of a devil or something. I don't know, implying that somebody's free. Their thoughts will go in like a wrong place. That's human nature in a way, and that's true in a lot of places when you really realize it, right? Like people find problems when they're too free. That doesn't exist there, and with certain intervention, they can be shown like, "What the fuck are you doing, man?" So that shit is real, right? Like you should never be just like, too many rich people and their kids who have nothing to do. They just sit there and like do ridiculous shit, right? Like if they don't occupy themselves, there's a real element there. So Eldars having the same element is like, okay, I have everything. What the fuck? It's like there is nothing to achieve. I literally have everything. So that just mind deviates into weird, fucked up things. And every case and scenario you can think of, right? Your imagination, your limit at this point. They probably did all that shit. That's insane. I love that psychological element where Warhammer added that shit for the entire race and like a creation of a god. Where if you get too good at everything, there's a limit, right? There's a threshold. Beyond that, like your species kind of fucked, which is insane.
Violent sports is one thing, but how come we don't do sports to the death? I mean, I'm just saying, like, if both participants are willing and clear about it, like, what really is the problem there, you know? Art is in the eye of the viewer, and what is considered art is completely up to the concept of one's own interest. A canvas adorned with the blood of a man wronged is truly the visual poetry that our society needs. Hedonism. With a slow and consistent hedonism, the Eldar slid backwards into debauchery of the sort I cannot discuss on this YouTube video. Murder on stage, delicacies and drugs distilled from one another, the trade of slaves and concubines, and much worse. The Eldar physiology has their emotions heightened, and they can feel more than a human does. So while it can provide lows of pure despair, it can also provide greater highs than you have ever known. And swinging between the two of them was the Eldar game. The warp.
Yeah, Eldars are so fucked up. If you were to choose between three, like who do you want to invade yourself, right? Like somebody's going to invade your place. Is it going to be Tyrannid? Is it going to be Orc? Is it going to be DRUKHARI? Probably choose Orc. I'd rather die when Orc are thinking like, okay, this is fun and this is like, I don't know, honorable in that way, right? Tyrannid is just being boxed, just eating you up. And DRUKHARI, let's just say I'm not wanting that shit. Never DRUKHARI, right? I'd rather not have DRUKHARI invade me. Like Orcs are fine. I'm done in the end, but not DRUKHARI.
Took notice of this heavily, and it began to react. On a galactic scale, the debauchery and the hedonism of the Eldar race caused levels of warp storm so pronounced and so volatile that it cut off interstellar travel for all those who used it. Communications between planets was removed, and a nightmarish era of old night began. This continued for thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years. The Eldar all but removed from the problems being caused as they entered heights of more and more ecstasy. They needed more and more and more. Nothing was ever enough. More murder, more torture. It's art, it's delicacies, it's life. This silence offends
It's
Slanesh.
turning purple.
Wait. Slaanesh, the Prince of Pleasure, she who thirsts, the god of unspeakable excess, is our fourth Chaos God with the sacred number of 6 adorning their title. Slaanesh is a bit of a tricky one, because with our other 3 Chaos Gods, there was a certain understanding of human emotions and desires, but for Slaanesh, that desire is how they get their power. The words to be used would be decadence, pleasure, perfection, passion, excess, and many others. The pursuit of more, the want to do more, experience more, become more. That's what gives Slaanesh their gifts. A lot of people believe that Slaanesh is something that originates with sex, specifically, and it makes sense why they assume that. The visuals of Slaanesh patrons are all very lithe and sexual, but they are also intentionally androgynous to appear attractive to a variety of intrigues. However, to think that Slaanesh specifically derives from sex would be mistaken. While it is true that a lot of humanity's actions can relate to getting laid, and Slaanesh is the dark prince of desire, it's more on the lines of feeling an excess of an emotion. It is excessive touch and scent and desire, and a lot of that has to do with sex. That's why it looks like sex, but it's more than just that. A patron of the arts may feed.
Most of it is sex. Doesn't matter how somebody, like, Slaanesh would basically describe you. It's more than that. It's not, let's be honest, right? It's like your wife just asking for, like, oh, let's experiment. It's about, no, you just want more. That's it. Yeah, you just want orgy. That's what that shit is. So in the end of the day, it's mostly sex.
Slaanesh, one that aspires to become the perfect chef or master of their craft, and the sheer pursuit of that alone will feed Slaanesh. Whiplash is Slaanesh's absolute favorite film. Videos where people beat Elden Ring on a dance pad feed Slaanesh.
There are no 2 words in the English language more harmful than good job.
But is there a line?
No, man, no.
This also moves into the concept of feeling. Sensation is a majorly Slaanesh-coded thing. It might start off feeling good, but then you get to play around a little bit, you know? You play with a little bit of pain. Light pain might not be enough, so you might want more. Or inflicting the pain could be your jam. Music can increase to volumes that may hurt your ears, and even then that might not be enough. More. You must have more. Many of the disciples of Slaanesh carry a demonic form in their lithe grace. The Keeper of Secrets is his chosen envoy, and their movements are a blur of dance and pain with an aura all the more fatal. They dance and sing, but there's always a form of malice behind every action they take. An alluring gaze that will pull you in right before the demonic entity can crush you in that grip. Slaanesh's palace has 6 layers surrounding it, and one of them is the excess of gluttony, where the participant finds themselves in a beautiful banquet full of the most delicious foods imaginable. Tables of delicacies and rivers of wine tempt the user to such a degree that they cannot stop stuffing their face, unaware that the things they are eating are very vaguely familiar meat. If one does not see themselves drowning in the river of wine, they may soon fill their bodies up so much that they cease to function and fall over, becoming part of the banquet themselves. That is one of these 6 layers of Slaanesh's palace. This was the ecstasy that the Eldar civilization indulged in for millennia, and did so at a monumental scale that they created a god from it. Find pleasure in every moment, indulge in every whim, let lesser races feel the burden of their crude lives. We are beyond such concerns or worries. Every power is ours to use, every sensation ours to experience. We are truly masters of the galaxy, and all others exist only to satisfy our curiosities. We have earned our position of power. Let us forever taste the fruits of such achievement. Time itself is ours to command. We are eternal.
Victorian British. That's who said that.
With the birth of Slaanesh, the Eldari Empire ceased to be. A catastrophic event so horrible that the warp ripped a hole permanently in our reality, a fissure forever known as the Eye of Terror. With the sudden inhalation of this god's largest breath, the Eldari souls are a currency to be now collected by she who thirsts. Trillions of Eldar died in an instant, Slaanesh gorging on their souls to satisfy his palate. 99.9% of their entire species died, and the rest are doomed to a fate worse than death. For Slaanesh now stakes a claim on each and every Eldar soul. From the moment they pass on, an eternity of torment awaits them. The remaining Eldar devote their entire lives to stopping this eventuality, their dying race so devoted to saving themselves from the Dark Prince, and in doing so have found very creative ways. In the
Craftwell, yeah. I guess DRUKHARI's escaped. He's gonna talk about that in live web. But yeah, Craftwell. This, I don't know why this is the person when I'm always confused. Craftwell Eldars, the one who escaped, sure, like, but how are they functioning? These are the Eldars that actually help the Imperium in certain times, right? Gilliman, yes, things like that, right? While DRUKHARIs are like completely different in less. There are two elements, right? And what happened to that immortality, right? Like they would never die type of. Did that change after Slaanesh?
The modern world of Warhammer, the craft world Eldar are the main force of Eldar in the galaxy and represent the elf style that many think of when you think elves in space. Fantasy elves in space, not those elves. We'll get to them. A craft world is a monumentally large starship, the size of a continent, that acts as a form of flotilla. During the highest reaches of hedonism, many Eldar saw the demonic writing on the wall and began to try.
That is like physically, when I think about that, like size of a continent. What about those spikes, man? Why create that then? That would be so big, it's like a size of a country. Why create those spikes and all those designs? If this is supposed to be the size of a continent, that's insane. Like, how would any, like, why are those like jets the way they are? Shouldn't be there be too many jets, or like it shouldn't be like 3-4 like it's a ship, right? I don't. If it's size of the continent, let's say this is size of Asia or something. Like, imagine this shit. Like, why does it shape like that? Shouldn't it be more like, I don't know, like more fluent, right? I don't know, more uniform than this kind of shape. I don't know.
Try and seek asylum from their own debauchery. Those Eldar left on monumental craft worlds into the far reaches of the galaxy and saved themselves from Slaanesh's awakening. The main thing the craft world Eldar seek is to temper their minds and bodies in a way that will never allow them to slide back into their old ways. The representation they carry is that of a more feudal Japanese motif. Eldar follow paths as they age, the path of the warrior, the seer, the poet, the diplomat, the bone singer, and so on. These paths are a strict code of conduct to hone the heightened Eldar psychology down a school of thought and action. And if it sounds a hell of a lot like Bushido, well, you're damn right. Here's a medal and a soul stone. Don't lose it or an eternity of torment awaits you. Going through these paths will allow you to take up not just a role in Eldar society, but keep your mind clear from the past worries that plagued them. Every Eldar is said to be a psyker, however, very few of them actually utilize their psychic powers for fear of tempting she who thirsts. A large amount of emphasis is also put on ancestors of the Eldar and learning from them the farther you go down a path. This can sometimes be seen by the large variety of jewels adoring the armor of Eldar. Those are called soul stones, the biggest middle finger to Slaanesh they can think of. See, when an Eldar dies, these stones act as a backup, and instead of their souls going to Slaanesh, they are then trapped and stored in this little stone. So when the Eldar say they commune with their ancestors, they mean so very literally, as the spirit and soul of generations before them are stored here. Often larger structures may contain vast amounts of soul stones, such as the Infinity Circuit in the craft world itself, allowing the souls of the dead to help power their enormous starship. The young do not desire the discipline of the path, but rather their curiosity drives them to try every fruit from the tree. Thus, it is that so many take the path of wandering or the path of damnation in their first years of adulthood. And so, the great tragedy of our kind is played out again and again as the number of our people shrink from generation to generation.
So basically, all the shit that happened with the Eldar, curiosities, like all that eventually leading to debauchery and things, the Kraftful Eldars are literally doing opposite of that, right? Having discipline, right? Disciplined thoughts and every way discipline, because alternative is going to the Slanesh, like going in that path. That's what this means, right? Try every fruit from every tree and just like they deviate and all that shit. That is interesting. Like, yeah, that makes sense. That's how Crawford, because DRUKHARI is just like, say, fuck it and just intensified and, went into like web bay and shit like that, right? Like they're doing even more intensive to somehow stay away from Slanesh. But these are opposite.
Generation. These paths, when completed, allow an Eldar to move to the next one, then the next one. However, since this is the grim darkness of the world, many of these paths rely on combat. The Eldar actually had gods at one point: Cain, Vol, Isha, Azaryan, and so on. These gods are aspects of the Eldar pantheon, and while many were killed in Slanesh's creation, their teachings live on. For some, the strongest devotion to the Eldar gods is to join the Aspect Warriors and embody the wrath of Cain, their god of war. While guardians of the Eldar craft worlds are more akin to a trained militia, the Aspect Warriors embody a particular variant of the path. Each are led by a Phoenix Lord, a name passed down from generations and embodying the souls of prior Phoenix Lords with each new one. The Howling Banshees, led by Jane Zar, Fugin and his Fire Dragons, Baharoth and his Swooping Hawks, or Malgan Ra and his Dark Reapers. Each aspect shrine carries with it the Eldar way of war. Fast, hard-hitting, and incredibly tricksy, for they do not have the numbers to fight in any other way. The Craftworld Eldar show how mangled an empire can be by their own actions. They once ruled the galaxy in an honest, non-hyperbolic way, but in the end, they were bested by themselves, and their most prominent remnants are forced to drift aimlessly through the galaxy, trying to save their species from extinction and resist the temptations of she who thirsts. But for some,
here it comes. Okay, but if Eldars have god like Cain and everything, what are they doing? Where are those gods? Shouldn't they be fighting Slanesh in some way? Like, okay, Eldars are mine, keep your hand off it type of way. It's Slanesh like, Eldar is the reason I was created in the first place. I am Eldar and Eldar is me type of shit. There could be warp of war amongst them. Wouldn't it? Like, but I'm going to guess Slanesh is going to be a bit more powerful than Eldar gods. Because chaos is very small, specific part of the warp, but warp is immense. And in that immense warp, there are like orc gods, there are Eldar gods, obviously. And who knows what else is there. So wouldn't there be like fighting, like, okay, what is happening there? Is there a lore behind there? Like, what are these gods doing when it comes to Slanesh?
party, it's just beginning.
Camera just went crazy.
Within the webway is the city of Kamara. This dark city once existed as a port in the webway that allowed for ease of transport for the Eldar between its various domains. The significance of this city meant that it needed to be a bit more of a neutral territory outside of the jurisdiction of general Eldar law, and therefore it was allowed to self-govern. This did not go well. The Dark City became the hideaway for all manner of sin. The Eldar race slipped into debauchery on a galactic scale that it birthed a god, and this was the city you went to when that wasn't enough for you. The convenience of being so deep within the webway was that it exists as a blind spot to the horrors of the warp. So while the rest of the Eldar fled the downfall of their species, Kamara kept partying. When Slanesh was birthed, they were saved the worst of it, thanks to them being nice and neatly.
I wouldn't say partying. Imagine a serial killer lair, which is 100 times more worse. And somehow it is organized and it's big. That's what that shit would be. Going there would be terrifying. Just looking at the what the fuck.
Tucked away inside the webway. But only somewhat. The Dark Prince did not have a grip around their soul, but the tiniest pinky finger, and they were still pulling. But due to their excess hedonism, they found a solution to this problem. If they tormented others, they could temporarily rejuvenate their souls and continue to cheat their inevitable death by placating the Prince of Pleasure. And if they kept this up on the regular, they could effectively become immortal. Thus, the DRUKHARI were born. Unlike the more stoic elves you see in works of fiction, the DRUKHARI themselves exist as a sort of analog of the more grim and fiendish elves you find in Norse and European mythology. The DRUKHARI are soul vampires, but the more basic means to feed are hardly enough to keep them going. This desire to feed is known as the thirst, and to quench it effectively, they have mastered the art of biotechnology and dark sciences to really juice themselves up on the crispy soul sprite from the vending machine called the Galaxy. The majority of DRUKHARI act as pirates and raiders and slavers. They go into our physical reality and drag people back to Kamara to commit atrocities that go beyond any imaginative.
Yo, why does that lamp look like it's made out of human skin? Because it is? Yeah.
Torture a human can think of. The DRUKHARI are organized in various groups throughout the Dark City to accomplish this in a more organized and extremely brutal way. The Cabals act as the main warriors of the city, led by their archons. Witches and succubi act as entertainment for Kamara in gladiatorial arenas, and the flesh-crafting homunculus keep the DRUKHARI alive and discover ever-increasingly more painful ways to torment their ever-increasingly large supply of slaves they are brought. The Dark Eldar see the other inhabitants of the galaxy as little more than cattle, livestock that can be brought to bay or slaughtered at any time. Their fodder, however, is not meat and muscle, but the anguish and despair of the weak. The Dark Eldar do indeed drink blood, but also tears, and most sustaining of all, the raw essence of pain they wring out of their captives. The truth of the matter is that DRUKHARI sustain them.
Imagine before Horus Heresy, right, in 31st millennia. Somehow DRUKHARI captured all the Primarchs and Emperor with them and brought them there, and just like, oh, here's more of cattle. And all of them like, what the fuck did you just say to me? Cattle? What would have like Emperor on the Primarchs just losing their mind in this shitty? Would they kill everyone? Because clearly they would be more powerful than just some race. These are near godlike beings, all the Primarchs and Emperor. Oh, here's a cattle. You call me cattle?
Themselves on the suffering of others, not just morally, but physically. Kamara is a city rife with backstabbing schemes and murder. It is the worst back alleys of the worst ghettos at the best of times. Nothing is more horrifying to a DRUKHARI than death, for death will see them in the talons of Slaanesh for an eternity of torment. So they do everything they can to stop this. The homunculi covens regrow dead members from pieces of flesh as bargaining chips. The succubi create grisly gladiatorial spectacles that literally rejuvenate the audience members as captives are murdered for sport. To be captured by the DRUKHARI is one of, if not the worst fate imaginable in the world of Warhammer 40k. In a universe built on war crimes, they are the most debased war crimers of all time. To be tortured and sacrificed in the gladiatorial arenas is a blessing, for you have escaped the fate of being in the Fleshsmiths control group, or being turned into a living and breathing piece of furniture for an Archon's quarters. In a cruel twist of fate, a newly born DRUKHARI does not arrive into this world loving torture. It is something they must grow to love. Grow to appreciate the suffering of other beings in order to survive in the world they have been brought into. If they succeed, they become some of the worst monsters in the known galaxy, a dark reflection to the Craftworlders and a taste of what Eldar society was like before the fall. If they do not succeed, they must find purchase elsewhere. Often those will join smaller parts of Eldar society like the Exodites or the Harlequins. Exodites believe in a pre-industrial variant of their society, often retreating to more lush worlds to ride dinosaurs and live off the land. Prehistoric style that I would normally laugh at if they weren't riding dinosaurs like ballers. The Harlequin dancing troupe are a subsect of Eldar that are more
Play Dovahkiin music. That's what's happening there with the dragon skull armor. What is it? Dragon bone armor, scales and shit, and like riding dragons. That's primitive there.
than just a little strange. A carnival of dancing jesters that serve the Eldar laughing god of Kegarak. They arrive never when expected and leave just as quickly. Blurs of light carry their footsteps as they dance their foes into a grave. Combat is just as much of a joke as it is a play on bloody murder. They travel and aid many other Eldar and sometimes even humanity for reasons we can never understand. Perhaps one day we would have, were they not stripped of their army book and folded into the Eldari Codex. So I suppose it'll have to stay a mystery, or maybe it was one of Kegarak's master plans to get back at She Who Thirsts and save their species. Who could know? Perhaps it was all a sick and practical joke to Kegarak, and he would just find it very funny to watch me fumble the discussion of one human on a tiny blue planet across the galaxy. Oh, speaking of.
Yeah, so those are basically glorified stage actors who just become murderers. There you go. At Eldar level, why not? Drukharis are too fucked up, man. I don't know, like, as soon as I realized what Drukhari was, understood the lore, I guess with the Bricky's old video, I don't know when that was looting, I don't know. And I'm like, what the fuck? I just like immediately realized all the darkness that come with it. I'm fine getting captured with anyone and just getting completely, ended. Not with Drukhari. That's worse. That's really worse. But yeah. Right, well, I'm gonna stop here. Do the next part next time. We covered Chaos Gods and a bit of Eldar in that as well, because obviously how are you gonna talk Slaanesh if you don't talk about Eldar? But yeah. Right, if you like my next video, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.